Hey, welcome back friends to the Build It Basement. Today we're going to do a relatively quick video about Klipper Screen, a couple ways to install it, a couple of gotchas for anybody that purchased a Waveshare 5.5 inch screen and is attempting to use it with Klipper Screen, and a couple tidbits about your Raspberry Pis and the underlying OS and some other things in there too. So kind of a menage of things here going on in this video, but let's jump right into it. Let's take a look at what Klipper Screen is and what it does. So let's take a look at the printer. How exciting, a printer sitting on a desk. So right here is Klipper Screen. This is the this is kind of like the home screen. This is what you're looking at. This is the basic Klipper Screen. Now, keep this in mind, and I know it's kind of odd looking at this with my little finger here waving around it, so I'm going to keep my finger out of it. I'm just going to talk over this. Basically, we have a touch screen, we have a GUI here, we have the ability to control the printer. Right now it's homing itself. We have the ability to do a bunch of things from here. We even have the ability to bring up, where do I want to be here? System. Nope, I want to bring up. Yeah, we could do here to do upgrades here or to do updates here. We have the ability here to set up network information here. We have the ability here to do a bunch of stuff. Let's go here. We can even bring up a console if we wanted to, and do a bunch of stuff here if we wanted to. But anyways, all that aside, Klipper Screen's pretty cool. Allows you to do a lot with the printer. And we'll say this, it's not any quicker than using a scroll wheel in a small screen, now that I put fingerprints all over this dang thing. But it allows you to do a lot more than what you can kind of get in there, and you don't have to dig so deep in the menus. So it's kind of nice to have. It's a pretty interesting and fancy way to control your printer. So all that put aside, that's a rough overview of what Klipper Screen is, what you get out of it, what it does for your printer, what it provides to the front of your printer, and kind of a really quick overview of what it does. I'm not going to get into the menus and things like that. You get it, you play with it, you're probably going to like it. So without any further ado, let's look at how we install Klipper Screen. And basically, I got two ways to do it. I got one way that I kind of hate to admit I prefer, because it's not the way I normally do things, but maybe I'm changing. So let's do a screen share. All right, Klipper Screen. First steps, we can go to the Klipper Screen, read the docs.io. I'll try to get this information also in the notes for this video as well. Some of these links, so you can go ahead and follow them. But basically, there are two primary ways to install Klipper Screen. One is manual, and one is using the software known as KIAUH, and I'm not going to try to say it because I can't. And if I do, I'm sure there's about 15 kajillion ways that people say it. But basically K, some vowels, and an H. How about that, right? We'll just call it K from now on out, the auto installer. So anyway, so what is this auto installer? And I don't want to make a big video about this. This is just kind of a small portion of this particular video. But basically, it's an easy way to install Klipper on a printer, meaning that basically you can install Klipper, allow you to build your firmware, and then install some additional things on there, your mainsail, your fluid or mainsail, I should say, Klipper Screen. What else can you do in there? I forget. Now you do Moonraker, Crow's Nest. Yeah, you can do Crow's Nest. There's a bunch of different things you can do in it. So anyways, this is what you're looking at if you do it this way. And this is basically as simple as running a few commands on your already built Klipper or your Raspberry Pi, if you will, via your SSH into that Raspberry Pi. So let's open up our Putty real quick. We're going to be using Putty today for quite a bit of this. So 6.4. I'm going to be manually doing some things here real quick. I want to try to make my text bigger in Putty so people can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to then save that. Let's see here, session logging. Let's do that. And let's save this as, and save. And let's go ahead and open that one. There we go. All right, so I got the jumbo text here on my putty so we can all see it. So everything on this printer currently set up is kind of a default. So I'm logging in as Pi because that is the default for logging into our Raspberry Pi. IP address, my local IP address to my Raspberry Pi. You're gonna need that if you're SSHing into it. Hopefully you know how to get that. If you don't, I have a video on how to use Angry IP. You're gonna have to go back some ways though. And our default password is Raspberry, of course. Hopefully we spelled that correctly and we didn't mistype anything there. So there we go. I have, let's see, Wi-Fi is currently blocked by RF kill. Use Ras-Pi config set country before use. So I haven't done that because I never configured Raspberry Pi Wi-Fi on this particular printer. Maybe I'll go back and do that at some point. Maybe something you want to do. I tend to keep my printers plugged in. So what we're going to do here, and let me actually do this, do a split screen, is I'm going to show you what this KIAUH installer does real quick. So we're gonna actually follow this on the GitHub, but I actually already have it opened here, and gives you instructions how to install, which is basically baking a new Raspberry Pi if you want to do it from scratch, because they're suggesting to start off with a base OS of Raspberry Pi Lite, which doesn't come with a desktop environment. So if you want to do this way, this is another way of doing it. It's actually pretty dang easy way to do it. So I probably at some point will do a video on how to build a whole printer using this particular procedure, but there's a ton of people out there doing it. I had just never done it when I built this printer. Now that I've taken a look at it and have tried it, I actually kind of like it. So yeah, so we're going to jump through this and you can follow through this. We're at the GitHub for the KIAUH installer, and I'm just going to copy this right here, which is going to get us running here. It's telling me right now there's an update. I'm not going to do the update right now. We don't need to wait for that. But this is the GUI for this program, which is all number based, and basically we can see here that we have our Klipper installed, we have Moonraker installed, we have Mainsail installed, we have we don't have Fluid installed. We probably wouldn't want Fluid and Mainsails installed. We could, but probably don't want them. On my other printer I do have Fluid. I like both Mainsail and Fluid. They're a little bit different. There's a lot of comparison videos on that. Maybe I'll do one at some point. Klipper Screen is installed. I've already installed it. And then Crow's Nest is installed on this, and then some other additional things for remote viewing of your printer and things like that, which we're not doing. So what we'd want to do here is basically hit 1 for install, and then we'd want to pick what we want to do here. They're all numbered out based on what they are. You have your firmware, you have some web interface, you have your touchscreen GUI, your GUI, which is 5 for Klipper Screen. We'd go ahead and hit 5. We'd install that. It would actually go through the process all by itself. It asks for very little, if anything. So yeah, so I'm gonna hit back because this is the first way that you can do this, and I kind of suggest it. It works pretty well. I'm gonna hit Q for quit. We're gonna back right out of this, and we're back to our Raspberry Pi. So that's option number 1 for installing your Klipper Screen, and it works really well. I think it's an awesome way to do it. Let me get to the right place here. Okay, so the other way to install Klipper Screen is to manually do it. And to manually do it, basically, you're going to clone the Git for Klipper Screen. So basically, you're going to get yourself back to the root here. We're gonna. By the way, easy thing to do here. If you're following instructions, and I'm going to leave links to these instructions, these different instructions in different places. If you basically highlight and copy, mouse click, right, do a right click, hit copy. If you right click in your putty session, not a control P, but a right click, it will type it right in for you. You can run that. You can go to your next line. You can go ahead and copy that as well. Right click over here and hit enter, and it's going to do what you need to do. It's telling me that the directory already exists because we know that and we've already installed it. So in this one right here, it is basically bringing us to that directory, which we can do. I'm not going to run the installer because I don't need to, but I can hit LS here, which basically is going to list everything in that directory. And we can see right here that we have a bunch of things that have stuff to do with this. So Yeah, so that basically is how you would manually install Klipper Screen. If you were doing it, you'd follow these particular instructions. You can just copy and paste them over like I did, with the final one being this one right here with scripts, Klipper Screen, install sh, and it will install all the packages required to install Klipper Screen and do everything you need to do that. And then once you get done with that, you're possibly, and these are some things you're possibly going to have to do. You don't always have to do them. You know, these are Tinker machines in some ways. Is basically an authorized client in Moonraker. I'll show you that real quick what that looks like. So let's load up our printer here and let's bring up our machine. And basically we've gone right here, we're on machine and we're on mainsail. Basically we're going into where our config files are for everything, and then we're going to open up our Moonraker config right here, and towards the top here usually you have a section for trusted clients, and basically those are things that are local or things that basically you want to be able to interact specifically with your printer as trusted things that don't necessarily need additional credentials to do such things. So it makes things easier. You may have to add that 127.0.1, is that what they're, yeah, 0.0.1. In my case I don't need that, but you may. Another thing you may need to do in the Klipper Screen config is add your Moonraker API key. So your Moonraker API key, let's see if we get back to this right here. Let's see here, there's our Klipper Screen config. If you need to add your Moonraker API key, you're going to basically be doing it right here. Again, that's something I didn't need to do here. I'm not going to go into how to get the API key. Basically, you do it in PuTTY. There's a couple commands you type in, it plops it out, and you can basically copy and paste it in here if you need it. Again, I didn't need to do it. I don't think you're going to have to do it either. Some of this information changes based on version numbers, so keep that in mind. Let's see if we get to the right screen here. So once you have that all done, I'm going to show you one last thing that I think everybody should do, everybody should be aware of, and that's basically adding to your upgrade manager or your update manager, your Klipper Screen to that. So what you're going to do here is basically in your Moonraker config. So again, we're going to go back in the Moonraker config, and down here you have update manager and you have some different things. In this particular case we have the mainsail config, mainsail, crow's nest, Klipper Screen, because we've already added Klipper Screen. Well, that was as simple as copying the text off of there and go ahead and pasting it in, and then basically what that's going to do is allow your mainsail slash your GUI, your Moonraker slash your GUI mainsail or fluid to be able to look to see if there's updates for those programs or those pieces of code and provide you with information, which will show up right here. As you can see right now, this printer as it sits, there are a couple upgrades or updates available for it. You can choose to run them just like that if you want to do them right away, or you can hold off. A lot of times these are very minor. You don't need to do them. A lot of times they're security based, or there's little tiny pieces of code that get modified. Big things usually don't happen that often, but you should probably update your software every once in a while. So we have Klipper Screen installed now. We've looked at what we need to do that, and I mentioned in other videos, I mentioned in a couple posts on the channel that I ran into a couple issues with my Waveshare screen. So let's jump right into that and talk about what those issues were and kind of how to work your way around it. I think it's important because a lot of people have purchased some of the same stuff I have. And even if you haven't, this will give you kind of a way to look at specifically what you might be seeing for an issue. So jump back in here to our screen view, and we're going to come back in here to our Raspberry Pi, and we're going to basically, the slow way, work our way backwards. So right here, we're at, where are we here? We're working our way back. Now you could basically go all the way back to root quicker, but here we are. So, and the reason I did that the slow way is I wanted to show you basically every time you hit CD space period, you're basically moving yourself backwards. You're going backwards in a folder. Every time you move into a folder, you're going forward in a folder. So CD space period moves you back. LS list what's inside of that particular folder, or that directory, if you will. So specifically right now, we're back here, and I want to get into the boot directory. So I'm going to do a CD, and I'm going to do a boot. And now I am in the boot directory. It's showing me that. I'm going to do an ls just to show you that real quick. And in here, we have a specific file called config.txt. So if you're not overly familiar, I'm going to do this slow, but basically we're going to do a sudo, which is super user do. Basically we're taking control. We're becoming the super user. We're becoming, you know, the super admin. We're basically taking control of the file structure, the folders, everything. We're giving ourselves permission to make modifications at that point. So we're going to do that. We're going to type in nano. And nano is a very, very, very small, I mean, it is nano, text editor that's available on the Linux system. It's built right into the kernel, I believe, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that. So we're going to do sudo nano, and then we're going to do config.txt. So, and basically what that is going to do is it's going, and it's actually not showing up on the screen there. Oh, I hate that. That is not showing up. We're going to move this up. Why? There we go. I apologize for that. So what that basically is going to basically give us the ability to run nano with the ability to overwrite, rewrite, change, modify a file that you normally wouldn't have the ability to do. Config.txt is a file that has a lot of information in it that the Raspberry Pi uses when it does boot, and we need to change some settings in there. So we're going to hit enter, and we're going to get nano, GNU Nano 5.4 to be exact. And in here is a bunch of stuff. Most of it's already commented out. We're not going to pay attention to it. We're going to use the arrow keys to work in here. And what I will point out right now before we get too far is down here at the bottom. I'll move this over a little bit. Down here at the bottom, you'll see you have these commands. These basically control commands. So a control G would bring up help. Control X will exit. If you make modifications to a file and hit control X, it will ask you if you want to save it. I strongly suggest you hit control O when you're done to write it out. Make sure it's the right file name, all the stuff, and then exit. It's just OCD, I guess. But there's some simple commands down here you can look at. So all this stuff that you're seeing right now in this this light seafoam blue or whatever you want to call it are basically just comments or commented out things that that are available, but we're not using, such as infrared communication. We're not using infrared communication. It's on here, but it's nothing to do with anything we're doing. Camera overlays, detect the cameras, that's on. We could probably turn it off if we wanted to, but we're not going to mess with any of that. We're not using DSI displays. We could turn that off too. And we have a bunch of other stuff down here. Now, this is where, well, let's start with the major thing down here. So this all is added code here. These last couple lines specifically are all added. So these are the things specifically that basically are forcing the HDMI to run in such a way that allows that Waveshare screen to work properly, such as these HDMI timings, HDMI mode, and then group and some boost and some height and some memory stuff and whatnots. But basically this specific code is for the most part required in order to make that screen work. Now, if you run the screen without this, it will turn on, it will do things, but it's going to look like a complete mess. It's going to not be readable, it's not legible, it's nothing but gibbledygook all over that screen, and that's a real English word if you want to look it up. But once you put in the proper timings for it and everything, you restart, you're going to have a screen you can read. You're going to see the boot load process of your Raspberry Pi. But the issue is going to be that your screen is going to be in portrait mode, because the default on this setup is for that screen to be portrait mode. It's how it reports itself. It's how it comes across. Now, you'll do a quick search, or you may do a quick search, and you'll find that if you do a display underscore LCD rotate equals 3, this particular screen that will rotate it 90 degrees, which will take it from portrait mode and switch it over to a landscape mode, which is great, right? But it's not going to work. Why isn't it going to work? I'm going to tell you. It's not going to work because, and I kind of gave it away here because the text is in the pudding. The pudding's in the text. The proof is in the pudding. Whatever you want to say. There is acceleration on a Raspberry Pi 4, and this is specific to a Raspberry Pi 4 when using the Waveshare screen. So when you are using a Raspberry Pi 4, and when you have a Waveshare screen, you need to be able to rotate it. You cannot rotate it with acceleration turned on. It does not work. There's no command I can find anywhere that does it. Now, the other option you'd have to do is basically run a batch file that would change the actual Klipper Screen configuration to move things around. I'll show you it in a second, but it's a cluster. It's a mess. You don't want to do it. You don't need acceleration to run Klipper Screen on your printer. It's going to be just as smooth either way. So my suggestion is you disable the overlay equals VC4 KMS V3D. You put in the line display underscore LCD rotate 3, the 90-degree rotation. You add the additional HDMI information you need here at the bottom to make that work. And then you basically write this out. And yes. And then I'm going to exit. And you're going to call it good. So when you hit reboot, it's going to make everything go blah. And we're going to come over here. And it's going to take a few moments. Why don't we switch over to Klipper Screen cam. So we're seeing right now, if you're not aware, this is basically Linux loading our Raspberry Pi OS Lite here. And what it's doing is loading modules, it's loading small pieces of software, kernel software, things that basically are needed in order for the OS to run, and as well as things it needs to do to make things function, different chipsets and things like that on the printer. But what it is not running is the acceleration, because we disabled that. So now we have Klipper Screen, we have it running, we can see it. I didn't show you the messed up version because it's just not worth looking at. It's a black screen with a bunch of white squiggly lines on it. But if you have that and you want this is the steps you got to take. So it's pretty easy, right? It's not overly complicated, and I tried to be relatively brief here. What are we at? We're at about 20 minutes on this video. It doesn't really need a 60-minute video to do this, and I could have provided some more detail and gone step by step by step. But if you've made it this far in your build, if you've made it this far in this type of hobby, you probably don't need those instructions. Now, if you do need those instructions, if you do have additional questions, by all means, leave me a comment. I can make another video that goes step by step by step. Mind you, it's going to be 2 to 3 times as long, but if you need that type of content, let me know. I'm more than open to answering any questions, comments, and providing content based on what you're looking for. So with that being said, do hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and if you didn't enjoy the video, hit the thumbs up anyways, because they'll help me out. And check out another video, maybe you'll like a different one. Yeah, short video. Don't really know what else to say. It's Klipper Screen. It's relatively easy to do. It looks awesome on a printer. Build yourself an awesome Voron printer or whatever it is. Add Klipper Screen to it. Do some LED lighting. Get some NeoPixels. Do a bunch of fun stuff. You know what? It's a fun hobby. You get to do whatever you want. You can take it as far as you want, and it's all up to you. So with that being said, I will see you next time. Tune into the next video. Tune in the next live stream and say hello. And yeah, see you later.